She's doing a thing like a blog, right, for homeless people.
How did you get to the street? What made you come to this situation?
A series of unfortunate events.
Like?
Going to jail 103 times.
Are you kidding me? 103 times? What started it?
I'm not sure. You want to hear alcohol, you want to hear drugs.
That's what I told her too.
That's not the truth though.
What is the truth?
Jealousy, rage.
Mass trauma. That's with me anyway.
How does it feel?
I just want to go home. I want my babies back.
Have a good day, man. She has a lot of hurt in.
Babies? He's got babies?
Yeah, he has a family, but he's separated from them because he's addicted to drugs just like me, right?
So now, let's see the tents.
Homelessness could be reduced to zero, and it would be a lot less expensive and much more humane. A few communities have done it, and it's worked, and I'm happy, to pass you the links. There's been some people who've done some incredible work, but in Toronto, and there's no standard. In other words, they have, I think the last news that I got, something like 9,000 shelter beds that the city's paying for, and they pay about $100 per day per person. So when you do the math, it's staggering. That amount of money could get everybody into a decent apartment and furnished, with some of the not-for-profits that provide furniture. But there's no leadership. Not one politician has taken it on, and certainly not the bureaucrats, and certainly not the so-called not-for-profits, because they're making a fortune. So where that money is going, I'm not sure. But it's not going to help people. They're not getting housing. They're not getting health care. They're dying on the sidewalk. And the last sad thing is that I've watched this happen for about 30 years with the numbers increasing, and the public, and we're good people, but people haven't spoken up.
Yeah, they call this laneway the dark alley.
Why?
Well, because people sleep here and people see like normal, civilized, like everyday working people see us, but a lot of them don't stop or, they don't ask how you're doing. And that's why I say we're nameless, we're voiceless, right? And there are a few good people that come around with clothes and food, but it's not an everyday thing. It's only once in a while, right?
Yeah.
Every other day we have to try to survive. That's why a lot of them that go panhandle, do the cars, or do window washing.
But this must be terrible. It must be terribly cold here.
Yeah, but there's ways, like, if you have enough blankets and sleeping bags, you can survive, right?
And it's not that I'm marketing my book, but what it is this, for an example. Let's say a person, for whatever reason, loses their home and doesn't have a lot of income or savings. Where do you go? Eventually, you can't keep sleeping at your friend's couch. So, or if you don't even have any friends, you end up on the street, and it's a horrible experience. And then you try to get help. Where do you go? Well, nowhere. There's no office that will say, come on in. What do you need? Okay, we'll help you get it. There's nowhere. So even the warming centers, I've been battling lately for them to stay open all winter, but they open for 2, 3 days when the weather is 15 degrees below zero. And then they kick people back out onto the sidewalks again. And the news reports have said that about 100 people have died on the streets this past year, and about 100 and something more in the shelters. So if you become homeless and you don't have anybody that will help you till you get over it, you can die, and nobody cares. So there's old people. Let's say you're an elderly couple, and you live with the 2 pensions. Well, if one of you passes away, when one of you passes away, the other person's pension is reduced, right? You don't keep getting a pension of the dead person. You get a little bit. They call it a survivor's benefit, but it's not as much. So then you have less income. So then you can't pay your monthly. If they'll take your house. And if you are renting, then they'll throw you out. Where do you go? On the street. Where do you turn? Nowhere. Honestly, if anybody was, heaven forbid, in that position now and went out, there's nowhere to go.
So what you're attributing it is to a larger socio-economic issue, which is, if I may interpret it, it's also housing, rentals. The whole property scenario is so bleak in Toronto. It's high rentals. It's the apartment rentals are so high, and also the pensions are so low. So that, of course, that is a very vital point, I think, that we're missing out on. There's another
Well,
question.
Subway trains are bypassing College Station. The next stop after Dundas will be Wellesley. Wellesley will be after Dundas.
Sorry, go ahead.
no. It just, I don't know how to put it, but there's been about 4 or 5 different mayors over the years that I've approached, and they all did the same thing, which is like funny but not funny. They said, help me get in, help me with my campaign, and as soon as I'm in, I'll get you to work with us and we'll change it. We'll make it right. And homelessness, oh, I'm busy now. And they just didn't. And, I don't want to embarrass them by naming them, but they know who they are. And they just didn't want to deal with it. And even Mayor Tory, with his so-called strong mayor powers, which I don't approve of, if he's such a strong mayor and he can rule about housing and development and condos, why can't he say enough's enough? We're going to house these people, get them health care, get them job training. And the thing is, some of them have money that they don't even know about. They had pensions from jobs that they had years ago that they never collected. There's so many things that could help them, and it's not happening. And, it's really a pity, because it would be so simple and so much cheaper if there were what we call, in some of the hospitals now, Sunnybrook is one of the top-notch hospitals in the world, and McMaster and Hamilton. For some of their hospital patients, they have a team of professionals called patient navigators. They get connected to the person as soon as they walk in the door, and they help guide them through all the different things. And they negotiate, and they stand by them, and they get them where they need to be. It's amazing. That's what we need for homeless people. We need a department or a team that's called patient or client or people navigators, and say, okay, let's get to know you. Right away, you need food, because on the street, you don't eat very well. What do you eat? Where can you get a meal? You buy a chocolate bar? I mean, they don't get food. They don't get health care. And nobody cares if they live or die. Horrible.
And also, there's a lot of drug addiction in the homeless community. Is it true to say that? Is it correct to say that?
Well, there is addiction, and addiction does mean that you're not at your best self. So of course it's hard to keep a job or a marriage partner or a home. But these days, as a social worker for like 50 years, and I've worked in a lot of hospitals and I've done research. Right now, when I started, a lot of things weren't known. But right now, I can say there is not one condition that cannot be treated, not one. So if you're addicted, I've known people who've been addicted and now they're fine. They run businesses, they have families, they have kids. There's nothing you can do about addiction. Like there's no treatment available. There's these so-called rehab centers, if your family can pay for it, thousands and thousands of dollars, but it's not scientifically and medically based. It's about talking and a lot of, I don't know, stuff. But I've seen people get the correct treatment for their addiction and they're good. They're good. And again, I've done the research, but it's not readily available or offered. I met a couple of people whose family asked me to help over the years, and I met them behind bars. They were in jail for possession or trafficking or whatever. You know, good young people just got into trouble. And I got them out on this condition that they had, that they would agree to seek treatment. And whatever the drug that was that they were addicted to, I found the right treatment for it. And it's incredible how well they've done. So again, there's nothing that can't be treated, but we don't offer it. They offer methadone. Well, that's just as bad as heroin. It's addictive, it's harmful. That's not what I call offering good help. So again, the whole system needs to be redone in a way that's humanly friendly, and it would be way cheaper, way cheaper.
What else does your book talk about? I mean, you've mentioned some of the some vital issues like pension, and what are the other glaring flaws that lead to homelessness? I mean, flaws in the system or in society that lead to homelessness?
Well, I think the systems are flawed, but there is, like I said, there are a few good programs here and there, and a few communities that have pretty well reduced their homelessness to zero. And I am a big fan of the woman, and for some reason, it must be the end of a long day. I can't think of her name off the top, but she started a community organization and out of New York originally. It's in my book as well. And now she's been consulting with her company to different communities, and they've reduced their homelessness. Like, it's dramatic. It's awesome. So people have to care about other people, because heaven forbid it's your relative, your child, your grandchild, your sister, and there's no help. And then the thing that annoyed me the most, which I'm also fighting against, is that the solution that Trudeau put in is to expand the MAID, medical assistance in dying. So anybody who's feeling bad about their life, they can just ask to be euthanized. And I just thought, no way, this has got to stop. This is becoming very totalitarian. First, we don't help you get housing. We don't help you get your life in order. And then if you feel bad, we tell you, well, you can just die. No way. So a few weeks ago or a month ago, when I first heard about it, I got hold of people who are more important than me. And they spoke out. Rebel News had a few articles, different organizations. And then he quietly announced that the legislation, which was supposed to go through at the end of March, has been postponed. The debate on the legislation has been postponed for a year till March 2024. And there's a whole lot of people that are going to fight that. It's just not going to happen. That's not a solution. I mean, that's inhuman.
I was on the streets at Sherborne, and I was looking at the Salvation Army. You know, there are some homeless shelters, Salvation Army Community Center, and I was appalled to see there's so much of violence outside of these while people are waiting. It's really sad to see that kind of thing. It's not just the government; it's even these kind of organizations that.
The organizations are getting a huge amount of money, and they're doing very little. And you know what? If all you had was the street or one of those places, that's a terrible choice, because they're just not kind or caring, and it's a tremendous waste of money. A lot of them, they provide a mat, a cot, you know, very little privacy, breakfast. But then for years and years, I don't know who's still doing it, probably most of them, they would push people out after breakfast and say, come back at 6 o'clock for dinner. And why would they push them out? Because their premise was that they had to have the premises cleaned. Well, really, you could have people in an auditorium and do workshops. You could show movies. You don't have to throw them out with no lunch on the street. And that's why you see them sitting on the corners begging, and then they go back at 6 o'clock and have their dinner. But it's ridiculous to say the places have to be clean so people have to get out. That's just ridiculous. And, my other question years ago was, who owns these buildings? Because for sure by now there's no mortgage on them. There's a huge amount of rental income flowing somewhere. And that money that, like I said, has been put into the homeless industry, it's hardly not for profit, is completely wasted. I mean, I know a lot of people who live on 3,000 or less or a little more a month. They're paying the shelters 3,000, perhaps a bit more now, per person. And so when I did the math this morning, I was horrified, because if you take 9,000 shelter beds, which is what Tori said they have operating, and you multiply that by 3,000, that came to millions of dollars per month. I couldn't believe it. I thought, what are we getting for that? People on the street, people suicidal, no health care, no hope. And everybody, when we get a little cold or a little hungry or a little short of sleep, everybody gets a bit cranky. How can you blame these people? They don't have good food. They don't have health care. They don't have a warm, comfy place to sleep. Of course they're going to get a little bit out of control. Who wouldn't?
Very true.